Hi everyone, welcome to Dentist's Coffee Time. Have you ever found yourself standing in front of a piece of modern art, just kind of scratching your head and thinking, I don't get it. Or maybe even, my kid could have painted that. Well, if you have, don't worry. That feeling is actually part of a huge story, one that's been thousands of years in the making. Today, we're going to unravel the surprisingly complex evolution of a simple three-letter word, art.
So, to really get a grip on this, we're going to walk through 5 key stages. First, we'll lay down a simple framework for what art even is. Then, we'll jump back in time to its origins, when art was all about pure physical skill. After that, we'll see how it transformed into a way of expressing ideas, which leads us to a big challenge. Does art really have to be beautiful? And finally, we'll pull it all together into a modern understanding of what art means for us today. Sound good? Let's dive in. All right, so where do we even begin with a topic this big? Well, the first thing we need is a simple but really powerful framework to help guide us through this whole exploration.
I mean, what is it that makes a sculpture sitting in a museum art, but, say, a perfectly smooth, beautiful stone on a beach, just a stone? The answer isn't just in the object itself. It's actually a combination of the thing, the creator's intention, and of course, our own interpretation as the person looking at it.
The art historian Chang Soon actually gives us a fantastic way to think about this. He suggests that every single piece of art is kind of like a recipe with 3 core ingredients. You've got skill, or ji, which is all about the technical mastery. Then there's beauty, or mei, the aesthetic appeal. And finally, idea, or yi, which is the concept or the story behind the work. Now here's the kicker. Every work of art has all 3, but the real difference throughout history is just the proportion. The story of art is really the story of which of these ingredients gets to be the star of the show.
So let's start at the very beginning. I want you to imagine a time when there was absolutely no difference between an artist and a craftsman. A time when art was simply born from pure, unadulterated skill. This is where our story really begins.
What is just so fascinating is how cultures on complete opposite sides of the world started with the exact same definition. In the East, you have the ancient Chinese character for art, yi, which just meant skill. You couldn't separate it from handiwork. And then in the West, our word art comes from artificial, meaning something made by human skill, not just found in nature. 2 totally different worlds, but one identical starting point. At its very core, art is about human creation and technical ability.
These ancient Chinese bronze vessels are a perfect example. We look at them today as these priceless works of art, but back then they were also incredible feats of high science. I mean, to cast one of these things, you needed a super advanced understanding of metallurgy, precise temperature controls, complex chemical alloys. The creators were just as much scientists and engineers as they were artists. Art and science, they were one and the same.
The Parthenon in Greece tells the exact same story. When you look at it, is it a work of art or is it a marvel of engineering? And the answer is yes, it's both. The ancient Greeks, they didn't see a distinction. Its beauty is literally built on a foundation of mind-blowingly complex geometry and physics. And this fusion should feel pretty familiar to a lot of us. In dentistry, for instance, when we create a crown, it requires both a deep scientific understanding of materials and occlusion and the artistic skill to shape it for a perfect aesthetic fit.
We have this tendency to romanticize the artist's studio. But this quote, it just pulls back the curtain. I once had the chance to visit the sculptor Wang Suqi, and when I asked to see his workshop, he just laughed and said I didn't want to go in there, that it was just a world of dust and noise. And you know what? He was right. It wasn't some serene, quiet studio. It was a factory floor, filled with the scream of power tools and choking dust. It was such a powerful reminder that behind all that serene beauty lies immense, gritty, physical labor. But this intense focus on skill, on the labor of the hand, well, that wasn't going to be the final word on art.
For centuries, art was defined by the hand. But then, a revolution started to bubble up, a really quiet but profound shift that would move the focus from the hand to the mind. This is the story of art's great separation.
And this shift, it happened pretty gradually across different cultures. In China, during the 5 Dynasties period, landscape paintings suddenly became valued not for being photorealistic, but for their ability to capture a certain spiritual feeling, an inner essence. Then, centuries later in Europe, the Renaissance comes along and elevates the artist from a humble craftsman to a celebrated genius. The mind, the individual vision of the artist, was now becoming the true source of art.
So the definition of art began this historic pivot. It wasn't just about how something was made anymore, but why it was made. The emphasis slowly but surely shifted away from physical execution to the conceptual foundation, from the hand to the mind.
And this was a seismic shift. It was going to change everything. This whole evolution, from skill to idea, leads us right to a question that challenges our most deeply held belief about what art is supposed to be.
Just think about that for a second. We're pretty much taught from day one to associate art with beauty. But what if art can be jarring, or confusing, or even ugly, and still be great art? This very question would come to define the modern era.
And nobody challenged this necessity of beauty more than Pablo Picasso. He and the Cubists, they basically took the rule book of traditional art, with its single-point perspective and realistic forms, and they just tore it to shreds. His paintings aren't always beautiful in that classical sense. They're complex, they're fragmented, they're emotionally raw, but they are, without a doubt, powerfully art.
I will never forget standing in front of one of Picasso's later works. I was at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and if I'm being honest, I was completely lost. It just felt like this chaotic jumble of shapes and colors. I kept trying to find the beauty, the realism, the technical skill that I was trained to look for, but I just couldn't see it. And when I looked around, I realized all the other adults in the room were just as baffled as I was.
But then, something amazing happened. A father lifted his young son, couldn't have been older than 4, up to the painting, and he asked him, "Hey, what do you see?" And without a single second of hesitation, the boy pointed and said, "Look, a man walking down the stairs." He saw the story, he got the idea. And in that one instant, it just clicked for me. I was burdened by my expectation of what beauty was supposed to look like. But the child, he was free from all that. He saw the pure idea at the heart of the painting. He wasn't looking for beauty, he was looking for the concept, and he found it, just like that.
So we've gone from ancient craft all the way to modern concepts. Where does that leave us today? How do we synthesize all these different competing definitions to understand art in the 21st century? Well, the modern way of looking at it is that art isn't one fixed thing, but a spectrum. It's this dynamic dance between our 3 ingredients: skill, beauty, and idea. The magic isn't in choosing one over the others, but in appreciating that unique interplay between them in any given piece of work.
And this gives us a new, much more flexible way to appreciate the world around us. So the next time you encounter a piece of aesthetic work, maybe try this 3-step approach. First, just take a moment to appreciate the skill involved. Then, try to look past the surface for the idea. And finally, ask yourself what your personal definition of beauty is and whether it even needs to apply here. You might be really surprised by what you discover.
And this really matters, because this way of thinking, it expands our entire world. It lets us see artistry not just in a gallery, but in the elegant design of a bridge or the thoughtful way a meal is plated. For those of us in dentistry, it's at the very heart of what we do every day. We are both scientists and artists. We use incredible technical skill to create restorations that are not only functional, but also beautiful. In a very real way, our work is a daily synthesis of skill, beauty, and the idea of restoring someone's health.
So I'll leave you with this to think about. As professionals who are constantly blending science and art, when you look at a perfectly executed restoration, or really any aesthetic work for that matter, what do you value more? Is it the flawless technical precision, or is it the final aesthetic outcome? Is it the skill, or is it the beauty? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Thank you for watching. This is Dentist Coffee Time. Bye-bye.